Haha, my children, come closer. Let me tell you the story of the seamstress who didn't just sew clothes, but stitched herself into people's destinies. And this is not an ordinary tale. This is the tale of Ireti, the evil seamstress of Orita Town. Once upon a time, in the heart of Orita Town, where the women sell roasted plantain by daylight and whisper secrets by moonlight, there stood a boutique, but not just any boutique. It sat quietly at the very end of the market road, where the dust always seemed too still and the trees never rustled, not even in Amatan. The sign above it read, "Thread and Thunder." Nobody knew why it was called that, but when they asked Ireti, she would only smile and say, "Because that's what beauty sounds like when you wear it well." Ah, her name was Ireti, the seamstress with the fingers of a goddess and eyes of a secret. Yes, she was fine, oh, slender, tall, skin like polished bronze, her hands soft like silk, fast like lightning. But Ireti had a secret. She didn't just sew with thread, she sewed with intention, dark intentions. Soon, whispers spread through Orita Town, like smoke from a smoldering fire. Ah, Ireti's hand is golden, oh. She doesn't just sew clothes. Yes, I'm telling you, if you want your man to beg, you better go to her. And just like that, they came, one by one, two by two, like hands to sugar, like moths to the flame. The women of Orita, and even from beyond, began to flock to Ireti's boutique. They came with hopes, with secrets, and with silent desire to outside one another. But Ireti, she saw right through them. To her, envy was a currency, and she collected it like gold dust on silk. Bimpe was from Inugbo. Arrives, her face bright with excitement. She carries a picture of her dream gown. "It's my sister's wedding," she says. "I must slay like never before." Bimpe wanted to dazzle, to turn heads. And when Ireti looked at her, she smiled slowly and said, "You won't just slay, you will hunt them." Shade from Ilukmeju, well-groomed but anxious, clutching a lace wrapper tightly. "My 10th anniversary," she whispers. "The spark is fading. I want him to look at me like that again, like before." And Ireti, with eyes like still water, replied, "When I'm done, he will not just look. He will forget any woman he's ever known." And here comes Madame Ololade, Mrs. Money herself, the chief's wife, arrived in bold coral beads, fanning herself with pride. She scoffed at the other girls in the boutique. She had money, she had status, she thought she had seen it all. But Ireti only smiled and said, "Even queens need charm, mama. Let me show you something unforgettable." Each time she completes a dress, she breathes into the fabric as though giving it life. But it wasn't just beauty she gave them, it was something else, something unseen, something binding. It began with one woman, just one dress, sewn with elegance and cursed with obsession. And from that moment, the town of Orita would never know peace again. Bimpe So proud, so radiant. She danced in her gilly and lace, smiling to herself. But the moment she stepped out in Ireti's gown, the air around her shifted. Her husband, at first mesmerized, begins to change. Her husband Kayode stared at her, not with love, but with confusion, then frustration, then distance. Days passed and Kayode stopped coming home. No tests, no calls, just silence. Until word reached Bilpe, he had moved into the boys' quarters behind Ireti's compound. She went there, barefoot, broken, begging, but Kayode looked through her like she was a stranger. Bingwe wasn't alone. Shade, whose husband, kneeling at her feet, professing love obsessively, now sat beside her at dinner, but wouldn't touch her food. He kept blinking, staring out the window. Shade, he said one night, Ireti says we should sell the family land. Her spirit is guiding me. Ah, Shade dropped her spoon. That land was for their children, their future, but he had already sold it to Ireti's cousin. And then the unthinkable, Madame Ololade, the one who mocked younger wives and walked like she ruled the earth. She came into the boutique one day with her head high, but left with her spirit fractured. Her only son, Kola, a barrister and pride of the family, saw Ireti once, just once. By nightfall, he was at Ireti's door with a ring. By dawn, he had written his mother a letter. Mama, forgive me. Ireti is my destiny. I cannot eat, I cannot breathe. I cannot live without her. Ololade fainted right there in her parlor. The town healer had to be called 3 times that week. And yet, still, women kept coming. Why? Because no matter how many families fell, no woman wanted to be the one wearing old Ankara while others shone in Ireti's magic lace. Ah, jealousy, pride, vanity. They swallowed their fear and walked right into Ireti's nets like flies into a web. And Ireti, she kept smiling through it all. Her eyes twinkled like needles catching light. Nobody dared question her, not even when little children began waking up screaming, "The sewing lady is in my dream. She's cutting mommy's face." Yes. By then, the evil was not just in the dresses, it was in the hair. One Tuesday morning, Ojo Ishegun, just before the first market bell rang, a new woman arrived in Orita. She came quietly. No fanfare, no followers, no perfume cloud behind her, just a small woven basket and an old wrapper tied neatly around her waist. Her name was Anik. Anik walks into Orita barefoot. Dust rises with each step. Her head is covered with a plain scarf. Her eyes, calm but piercing. She didn't look like much, but her presence spoke louder than fashion. And the moment her foot touched Orita's soil, Ireti's candle flickered. Ireti felt it before she saw her, a shift in the hair, like a shadow stepping into her light. She looked up, and there she was, Anik, with eyes like ancient trees and a calmness that disturbed the silence. Anik steps into the boutique. All customers inside suddenly stop talking. The sewing machine stutters and odds. Ireti walked up to Anik, smiling politely. "You are new. What can I make for you?" Anik replied softly, "I came to sew. Yes, but not with your kind of thread." It was the first time anyone had answered Ireti without flinching, and beneath that smile, Ireti's jaw tightened. Ireti walked Anike to a private room in her stall, smiling politely, and then takes a measuring tape, tries to measure Anike's shoulder, but the tape suddenly shrivels and snaps in her hand. The red bead on the table cracks. A flame in Ireti's room behind flickers violently, then dies. Ireti's magic recoiled. It sensed something stronger, older, something untouched by vanity and immune to charm. Anike walked past the boutique mirror. For a second, a reflection shows her as an old priestess, clothed in white. Then it flashes back to normal. And then Ireti knew this was not a customer. This was a reckoning. Anike takes her clothes and leaves, never raising her voice. The thread had met its match, and the thunder will soon find silence. Because in every town, there is always one soul the darkness cannot touch, and in Orita, that soul had arrived. Since the day Anike stepped into Orita, something changed. Ireti no longer laughed from the belly. A candle burned unevenly. A mirror, once smooth and loyal, now cracked in the corners she could not polish. And outside, the whispers had begun. Who is that new woman? She sees her own clothes, no flair, but still. She glows. Hey, oh, my husband greeted her twice this week. Just like that. Anike walks calmly through the village markets. Vendors pause as she passes. Even goats turn their heads. Grandpa is playing, but the sun seems to shine only on her. She didn't need powder or perfume or prayers whispered over her blouse. She was untouched by Ireti's thread, and for the first time, Ireti felt fear. From then on, Ireti's power began to weaken. A customer complains, "My dress didn't work. My husband left me still." Another woman storms in, "Why did my son forget me?" Ireti snaps at her assistant. Her sewing machine jams. The spells began to weaken. The thunder stuttered. Each stitch she sewed now needed double the chanting, double the time, double the pain. Ireti visits Anike's compound at dusk. Anike is sweeping her front compound, humming softly. Ireti stands, adorned in her richest lace, lips red, eyes fierce. Ireti said flatly, "You are not from here. What exactly are you doing in Orita?" Anike, smiling gently, replied, "Sewing what was torn, mending what others have ruined." No shouting, no curses, just truth, spoken gently, and it cuts deeper than knives. At the response of Anike, Ireti's eyes bugged in fear, and she ran out of Anike's compound. That night, Ireti returns to her altar. She lights 7 candles, dips her thread in a red blood potion. She crafts a doll from torn clothes, braids it to resemble Anike. She tried to bind her, bend her, banish her, but every spell she cast turned back on her. Her candles blew out. Her doll wept tears of salt. Her altar shook, and the walls cracked like glass kissed by fire. More women start visiting Anik, not for dresses, but for advice. She teaches them to sew with their own hands. She gives herbs to one, a lullaby to another, prayers whispered over water. Where Ireti used thread to bind, Anik used it to restore, to remind them they were never powerless. And for the first time in years, Ireti's boutique stood silent. No thunder, no magic, only a reflection, cracked, alone, and watching the rise of the woman she could not unmake. And just like that, the thread began to snap, not with thunder, not with fire, but with silence. That's how it begins. The boutique once paused like a heart, now is breathed dust. The thread of power she wove so carefully began to fray. Former clients start returning, not for fittings, but for answers. Bingbe, face pale, tears dry on her cheeks. Shade, gaunt and barefoot, clutching only the dress that broke her home. Even Madame Ololade comes, dragging her son's empty suitcase. The woman she once clothed in power returned naked with pain. Their husbands gone, their homes shattered, their beauty useless in the face of spiritual rot. Ireti kneels before her altar, now cracked. Her calabash overflows, not with blessing, but with black water. A familiar spirit, once whispering in her ear, now silent. The spirit she fed grew hungry again. They had tasted sorrow, and sorrow is never full. Ireti begins to sleepwalk. She wakes up in graveyards. She sees needles in her food. Children cry when they see her on the street. Her own shadow detaches in mirrors. Her voice echoes back in a different tongue when she speaks alone. The same magic she laced into others, now tangled around her ankles. She stitched poison for others, but now it was her skin that could not breathe. Ireti lights candles to call the spirit to explain, but they arrive as screaming shadows, faceless and many. You fed us envy, you dressed the world in heartbreak, you shewed sorrow into joy, now wear what you made. And the shadows poured toward her like spilled ink from a broken calabash. Anik, seated beneath a tree, pounding herbs in a mortar, her eyes closed briefly, as if sensing the shift. The wind passes through her wrapper, but it does not touch her. When evil begins to rot, it makes its own fire. Anik didn't cause her. She didn't fight her. She simply stood, and Ireti, she crumbled all on her own. The wind howled that night in Orita, not out of rage, but as if singing a funeral song. Because when a storm has cleared, it does not shout, it simply reveals. Ireti, alone in her boutique, mirrors cracked, threads tangled like a nest of snakes. Her hands twitch as if they no longer know how to sew. She tries to stitch her pain into others, but now she wore the full garment of her deeds, a gown sewn in silence and soaked in regret. Town elders invited Anik to the village square, wondering who could she be. The people had seen enough. Their women were breaking free. The charm was lifted, the curse unraveling, and now they wanted to know the woman who had walked with no shoes, yet shook a mountain. Anik stands in the square. She removes her plain wrapper. Beneath it, a white gown glows faintly. Her scarf falls, revealing white tribal markings across her forehead. She was no ordinary tailor, no visitor. She was Anik, the daughter of Aru, priestess of the forgotten shrine, sent not to curse, but to cleanse, a protector of women, a restorer of what pride and poison had broken. Ireti stumbles into the square, barefoot, hair loose, makeup gone. She falls at Anik's feet, tries to speak, but her voice chokes on silence. The Thunder Queen has no storm left. Her hands once chills of glamour, now trembled like a weaver with no loom. Anika lifts Ireti's chin. She takes a single white thread from her waist and places it in Ireti's palms. The crowd watches, held breath. What you do with this will decide what comes next, Anika said. Redemption or complete unraveling. Because power is not in thread, but in the hands of the one that holds it and the heart that guides it. In Orita, the storm passed. The thread, once bound, became one that mended. And the name, Anike, it whispered not with fear, but with gratitude. In every town, there comes a time when the storm must stop, and the thread must pass to a sturdier hand. And in Orita, that hand was Anike's. Moral of the story. In life, beauty is not power, and power without conscience becomes a curse dressed in lace. Ireti thought she could sow love, control loyalty, and stitch her way into people's hearts. But what she stitched was bondage, not beauty. What she offered was illusion, not love. You see, when you build your success on pain of others, that pain will one day knock at your door, dressed in your own garments. Anika's coming was a reminder. The true healer wears no crown. She doesn't dazzle. She restores. She doesn't enchant. She enlightens. In real life, we often chase admiration. We crave validation through appearance, titles, or influence. But when we arm others to rise, that rise is not flight. It is falling in slow motion. This story teaches us that true beauty uplifts. It does not bind. Power used to control will one day lose control. Every gift, skill, charm, craft is a thread, and with every thread we choose to weave healing or to tie others down. And finally, in a world full of Iretis, be the Anike, quiet, steady, unmoved, showing allness in palaces, in places torn by pride. My dear listener, if this story held your heart, if it made you think, feel, or just smile a little, then don't forget to click that red button below. Subscribe. Let's keep our stories alive, one tale at a time, one thread, one truth, one lesson. Turn on the bell too, so you won't miss the next tale waiting for you under the moonlight, and share it with someone who needs to remember there is always a moral hidden in the story. Thank you.